This fast 9 comp is the strongest comp at the moment, and it have an insanely high average placement, and the same goes for a plus 25% win rate. When we put up the stats against a comp like Reroll Samira or the Jazz comp, it are not even close. This should be the comp that you want to play every single game if the game gives you the option to play it. The first thing is that we want to get to level 9 every game, and yes, we can do it consistently with the right strategy. But before we get into how we do that, let's look at what we are looking for. By default, we are looking for the two bruisers, Zed and Illaoi. Illaoi will be the main tank, and she does also have the solo trait that gives us these 2 extra units that can help us out either in the front line or even playing as a bait later in the game. Then we play the 2 guardians, Thresh and Yorick. Yorick will be our bruiser and will likely hold the bruiser items if we have the chance to slam any of them without using components for the main carries. Thresh is also a great unit, due to the ability where she stuns a lot of units. In the backline we have Misfortune and Bard, mostly due to we want the Jazz trait, and then we have Jhin and Ezreal in the backline who both can be carries. We do also put in Ziggs, who can be the holder for the AP items, doing so he's probably the best 5-cost units at the moment. This is what we could look for if we are playing the AD variation, but there is also an AP variation, which is more or less the same in the front line, but the backline do change a bit. Now Ziggs is the main carry and is the main damage dealer. Sona will just be a healing bot who heals up everyone. And the 3 last units is more or less just to give us the trait Jazz, to give us an overall buff for the full team. These 2 variations is probably the best and most consistent ones, but there is many other variations and you do have to play around what you hit earlier in the game. So these 2 variations could just be an option for you if you don't know what to play later in the game. When it comes to items, Illaoi will hold the tank items, and if we are playing Jhin, he will hold 2 AD items plus 1 mana item. Ezreal could hold the same items if he is the carry in the mid to late game, but will transfer the items over later in the game. Are we playing the AP version, Ziggs will hold the AP items, meanwhile Sona will hold attack speed items plus a Sojourn just to heal everyone off. But do not focus too hard on having the best items, doing so we have to play what is good for us in the current game and from that building into the late game and using those items. To get to level 9 we have to pick up experience or economy augments, and at the very best case we are getting one at the very first augment. It could be any of them, but an option could be Tiny Titans, Budgets, Spoils of War, Escort Quest, or leveling up. But there is also a few combat augments that you should look out for. At the moment, something like That's Jazz is just completely broken, and this is a specific one for the meta. Other options could be bigger shots, and cutting corners is also great when it comes to experience or economy. Another combat augment that is also great at the moment is something like Healing Orb, and if you do have a lot of health, you could also go for the golden egg. But just remember, any augments that give you more experience or gold is great for this comp. And there is of course also some portals that are better than others and purely from stats. At this very moment, the 4 best is Showtime, Pot of Gold, Training Dummy, and an Anvil. Items should be slammed as often as possible. Doing so, we want to save as much gold as possible in the early game, so we have a chance to get to the very late game. The items that we can slam is more or less the pure tank items, because Illaoi can use all of them. Floor, Stoneblade, Heart, Bramble Vest, or Redemption is all useful. And we can even go for early Sunfire Cape if needed. 80 items that we're looking for will most likely end up going on Jhin, because he will be the main carry if we're going for AD comp. It could also go on Lucian or Ezreal, and that is why we're looking for items that can go on all of them. And that could be Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, or Giant Slayer. But doing so, we are also building a mana item for Jhin. It is possible for us to also go for Sojourn. Doing so, it can end up on an AD or an AP carry. But all of these units don't have to get their beast items, and they can use many different items. So it wouldn't be wrong to push a Gunblade, Hand of Justice, or a Deathblade if you can. Are we going a bit more in the AP direction? We will build items for Ziggs and Sona. And then items like Sojourn, Gauntlet, Rageblade, and Static Shift is more items that we want to look for. If we have the option to slam bruiser items, they will go on Yorick, and Yorick's main items will be Bloodthirster and Titans, and as the third could be Sterak, a second Titans, Hand of Justice, and even an Edge of Night. But we do only slam these items if they're good on the current comp that we have right now, and we will only move these items over to Yorick if he is a carry, and that will be if he gets him to 2-star. The main thing is that we do not want to sit on item components, but rather slam them and get to the full comp. We are building items for the current strongest units that we have, and we do not build around getting the best items for later. In the end of the video, I'll show you a quick gameplay and a few tips on how it could look like when you're playing and what you should focus on each step. So in the early game, we want to play the strongest comp as possible without using gold for leveling up. And our first priority is to gain as much gold as possible, and meanwhile hitting these marks with 10 or 20 gold to start the economy rolling. Throughout the game, we want to grab as many pairs as possible without you stopping your gold snowballing. So are you above 50 gold and do not have the chance to get up in level, grab a few units. You might need them for later if you get them to 2-star. And obviously focus on units that you can use. So if you already have one bruiser in, you might hold another unit who is a bruiser. After getting our first augment, that hopefully is some sort of resource augment, we might want to go for a 5 lose streak if we can, but we will never try to force it. It is definitely not worth losing 8 or 10 health every round just to hit the lose streak. If we can do the lose streak, a mark will be to have above 70 health. But no matter what you're doing, most importantly is to hit 50 gold before stage 3. What we play early game doesn't really matter that much. You just have to think that you want to gain as much gold as possible, do not lose too much health, and that is why you want to play around the strongest unit that you have. If we do not hit an economy augment as the first one, we do have to get one as the second one. And if not, you probably should try to play a different comp. But if you do have a fairly strong comp with a good economy, good health, and everything else, well, then you could go for fast level 9 even so. When we have all our 3 augments, we might want to have at least one combat augment. No matter what augment we get, we want to play the game with a high amount of gold all the time, and being level 7 at stage 3-5 with at least 50 gold. When we hit stage 4-1 or 4-2, we want to go level 8 and do a roll down to stabilize our board. We can choose to sell our headliner and hopefully finding a new item holder for the front or back line. If we simply just rush to level 9, we might not end up hitting what we want and just die out in a few rounds. What headliner unit you pick up at this point should be the one that holds the items. And you should also pick up other units that are strong, have the same trait as the new carry, or are 2-star. You have to consider stabilizing at this point before you're going to level 9. And by that I mean get some of the units to 2-star, hitting some 5-cost units that can hold items. And another thing you can remember is at level 8 we do not have a big chance to hit 4-cost units. But we do have a quite big chance to hit 4-cost units that are headliners. So when you start doing your roll down and seeing a 4-cost unit that is a headliner, you might want to abuse it and save your roll down gold for later. Whatever units you end up picking should holding some items, and you should play around that unit. When you have stabilized, your main goal is to get to level 9. And when you get there, you might want to consider selling your headliner to find a 5-cost one, or just move in items on new units when you hit them in the shop. And just before we get to a few position tricks and a quick tips on gameplay, if you can use this guide, make sure to subscribe for more guides on set 10. How we place our units can have a big impact if we are winning or losing fights. And by default, we can put our units like this, having the carries in the corners, having the frontline units in the front, and having the tacticals in the side. But are we playing against a 3-star Lux who will snipe units fast away from it? We might end up moving your units a bit around. The same goes when we are playing against an Akali who will snipe the corners as well. Another option is to move in your units and simply just placing your tacticals in the corners. That means Lux basically will snipe the tentacle, and when it dies the next one will be Bard. And meanwhile Bard is baiting the shot. Ilaoi might have cast her spell and getting it back up. So make sure in the late game to scout out for units who will snipe the backline. Once again, we don't really know what we're ending up with, and that is why I put in some random units. Another thing is that we could end up with a Qiyana, and if we play Qiyana, we want to put her next to the tank. And the reason why is the unit that she hit will throw over one of their items to one of our units. And that basically means that we can end up with even more items than we already had. And one last thing before we go into some gameplays and some tips on how to play it, remember before you start forcing this comp should only be played if we have a strong economy start or are getting to level 9 naturally. Let's say that you're playing Jazz or Samira reroll but are contested, and instead of rolling for ages, consider using your gold for experience to get to this comp. Pivoting in the late game is something that is really hard, and it's not for new players. So again, before you start forcing it, now you're being warned, and you should only play this if it comes naturally. Early game I see a Annie headliner. And I roll and see an experience augment, and now I already have my eyes on going for a fast level 9. I have my focus on not losing too much health and hitting 10 and 20 gold as fast as I can, and at the same time I'm moving in units to get more traits active, especially from my carrier's trait, but also for the defensive traits like Guardian. I do also hold units that I might want to use later. Here you can see me holding Tahm Kench, who is a bruiser and we might want to use later, due to we already have one bruiser unit in. At this point I'm sitting on 40 gold, and I do also have the option to buy Tahm Kench. When I see myself winning the fight, I do pick up the other Tahm Kench, just to make sure that we have a chance to getting a 2-cost unit that we can use later. Even though I might not use it, and even though it's not a specific comp. When I hit stage 3-3, I have 50 gold and I'm level 7. And now all I do is to look forward what units can fit into my comp and keep using gold above 50 to hit experience. At round 3-7, at the Wolves, I sell my headliner and go level 8 just to get a free headliner shop with a high level. I want a 4-cost unit at this point as a headliner. Doing so, it will give me a huge spike at this point. I have to pick someone up that I feel that can carry the game, and that is why I skip Blitz and go for sack instead of using more gold for rolldowns. As long as I feel my comp is quite stable, I do only pick up units that I feel can use in this comp and sell the rest to make more gold. From here, I only pick up units that I think should be in the final comp. So every time I'm done with a fight, I do use the gold for experience to see myself getting closer to level 9. When I get to a point where I'm close to level 9, with enough gold to go level 9 and also do some rolldowns, I do that. I sell my headliner, and as soon as I see a reliable carry, I pick it up and start slowly moving into the full comp with all the 5-cost units. And at the same time upgrading units. If you want to learn how to play a bit more consistent and easy comp, I have the right one for you here. And are you completely new, I recommend you to watch my beginner guide first. That was all for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next guide.